Sadashivasamarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmaracharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Home. Be seated, please. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahavidyan Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvisha vahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om. Very good. Nice to see you all this morning. In last week's Uddhava Gita session, we saw a particular verse in which Sri Krishna prescribed a very particular meditation practice. And at that time, I suggested that we would practice that particular technique today, and that's what we'll do. It's not an introductory practice, so I'll need to explain it properly. Also, just to give you a heads up, we're going to be resuming our advanced meditation sessions soon, maybe, I'm not sure exactly when, soon. And this would be very typical of the kinds of meditation that we do in that session, being a more advanced kind of technique. Okay, I think someone else is coming in. I just want to wait for everyone to be inside and settled, because this introduction is the whole thing. And if you miss the introduction, then there's no point. So I'll just wait for everyone to be seated, and then we'll begin. Actually, I'm going to begin at the board. All right. For those of you who are coming in, you're hearing laughs because I just mentioned about the importance of being here for the very brief but important introduction. As you've heard me say before, be late for any other class, but this one, for your sake, it's crucial to be here on time. Okay, let me go to the board and explain this properly. All right. So in, I think it was, if I remember right, it was chapter 15, verse 22, there was one line that was very significant, where Sri Krishna says, and he's teaching Uddhava, this particular meditation technique, bhava-apyayau, it's a dual ending, and anudhyayet. We'll skip the Devanagari, doesn't help anything. Bhava-apyayau, anudhyayet. So we saw that in last week's class. The meaning, bhava in this sense means arising, and apyaya is dissolving. Anudhyayet. Dhyayet, some of you may recognize as an imperative verb. One should meditate. But it has this prefix anu, meaning after, which suggests something a little different than meditation. It suggests what follows meditation, and what follows meditation is contemplation, Vedantic contemplation that we call Nididhyasana. And so that's what we're going to be practicing today. So anudhyayet, contemplate. One should contemplate on the arising and dissolving of what? In context of the thoughts in your mind, the activities in your mind. As I said, this is a more sophisticated practice, so we need to get the back story, so to speak, get the background, so we know exactly what Sri Krishna is teaching Uddhava and all of us here. Arising would be like the universe undergoing creation. Srishti, creation, let me put that in English. And many of you know it's followed by sthiti, maintenance. And laya or pralaya. My English isn't very good. Sanskrit is good. Pralaya, pralaya, dissolution. You've heard these three terms together many times. Srishti, sthiti, pralaya. We're talking about the universe. There's a cycle of universe. And I made mention of this last week, and that is in the famous Mandukya Upanishad. There's another level to this metaphor wherein Srishti can be compared to the waking state. Waking state, Jagrat Avastha, and Sthiti perhaps we can compare to the dream state, Swapna Avastha, and dissolution obviously can be compared to deep sleep, dreamless sleep, Sushupti Avastha. I'll save you all the Sanskrit. This is a metaphor. Now, the metaphor specifically is the arising and dissolution of the thoughts in your mind is compared to the arising and dissolution of the universe, and also compared to the arising and dissolution of your own experience, right? Experience begins when you wake up. That experience continues even when you're dreaming. And in dreamless sleep, that experience comes to an end. So first, Srishti, Sthiti, and Pralaya refer to the universe. And waking, dream, sleep refer to your experience. And all of this is a metaphor to explain what happens in meditation. And here's the crux, the center part of the issue. The point of the metaphor is the universe arises from what? And this is one place where the ancient rishis taught something radically different than what we found centuries later in the Bible, in the biblical traditions. Biblical traditions have it that the universe was created out of nothing, ex nihilo, as it's said in Latin, and the rishis rejected that and said, no, the universe something comes from nothing. Something can't come from nothing. So the universe comes from, and the word we'll use in this context, Brahman. The universe arises from Brahman, Brahman being the underlying reality or substratum because of which everything exists. So, and this is not our topic. This is a metaphor, by the way. This is not even a topic. So this is just to help us understand and give us information on what to contemplate. Before I continue with this, let me just point out the obvious. You can't contemplate on something that you don't understand. Make sense? So the whole idea of Nididhyasana, Vedantic contemplation, is to reflect on what you've already understood through the teachings of Vedanta. So it is a contemplative or meditative reflection on what you've heard in class or what you've studied in other contexts. So here, this is a material which mostly you've understood from prior classes. Most of you have been coming regularly, and you will be quite familiar with these teachings. So the universe, and so the understanding that's crucial for the contemplation is this. The universe arises from Brahman, is maintained due to Brahman, the underlying reality because of which it exists. And when the universe undergoes dissolution, Brahman continues to exist. So we can think the metaphor that's often used is a wave arising from the ocean, a wave traveling across the ocean, and a wave dissolving into the ocean. Very commonly used metaphor and very helpful metaphor. Notice the ocean continues to exist. The wave comes and goes, being born of the ocean, sustained by the ocean, and resolving into the ocean. The second aspect of the metaphor is to compare this process of arising and dissolution, to compare it to your own experience. So first metaphor is with regard to the universe. Second part of the metaphor is with regard to you, your own experience. In particular, when you wake up in the morning, there is the arising of experience, the maintenance of experience when you dream later at that night, and then the cessation, temporary cessation of experience in deep sleep. Notice that both of these are cyclic. One cycle followed by another cycle, and I think you're all familiar with that particular teaching. So, to conclude this, the universe is born of Brahman, sustained by Brahman, resolves into Brahman. Your waking state experience arises from what? Consciousness. Consciousness. We'll use the Sanskrit word chit. Chit means consciousness. So, when you wake up in the morning, your experience arises from consciousness. Throughout the day, just like waves are sustained in the ocean, throughout the day, all of your experiences are maintained because of consciousness, just like, we'll stay with that. And even when you're dreaming that night, your dream experiences are sustained by that consciousness. And then finally, in deep sleep, in dreamless sleep, all experiences come to an end, but consciousness remains. Okay, this is the necessary background. As I said, Nididhyasana, which is our practice. By the way, that word may not be familiar to you. And I see it misspelled in amazing ways. Nididhyasana. So you can see dhyai. Dhyai becomes dhya. Dhya is the root for to meditate. And then you see this div. For our Sanskrit students, do you recognize an abhyasa syllable? A reduplication, and a prefix. So this is our word, Nididhyasana, Vedantic meditation. So, as I said before, Vedantic meditation is to reflect or contemplate on something you already know. What you already know is this. So now, what are the mechanics of this particular meditation? Well, back to the Mandukya Upanishad, from which the second part of the metaphor is taken. The Mandukya Upanishad is famous for breaking Om into A, U, Ma. And if any of you ever chant Aum, I'll ask you to leave. This is one of my pet peeves, I'm sorry. Because it's become very popular nowadays, and it's absolutely contrary to the tradition. I know, it just drives me nuts. Very few things drive me nuts. Some things about politics can drive me nuts. But outside of politics, this definitely is what they call pet peeve. Okay, so in the Mandukya Upanishad, that division into A, U, Ma is made not for pronunciation, it's a grammatical deconstruction for the sake of this metaphor, wherein the waking state represents the A of Om, the dream state represents the U of Om, and finally, deep sleep represents the Ma of Om. Again, not for pronunciation, only it's a grammatical deconstruction for the sake of this metaphor, which is found for the very first time in the Mandukya Upanishad. So the structure of our meditation, this much is metaphor. The structure of our meditation is this. When you're chanting Om, you think of Om as beginning with A, beginning with A, Srishti, continuing with U, again, not pronouncing U, and then resolving into Ma. So the mechanics of the meditation is like this. A, just as your waking state experience arises from consciousness, in the same way, when you're chanting Om, where does A come from? Consciousness. And as you're chanting Om, with that U in the middle, it's being sustained by consciousness. The sound Om is in consciousness, both figuratively and literally. You're conscious of it, it's in consciousness, it's in your awareness. We use the words awareness and consciousness interchangeably. And then, when you're done chanting Om, it resolves into this makara. The makara is the letter ma. It disappears, it resolves into what? Consciousness. So this is the metaphor. There we go. Sit down now. Good. So this is the metaphor which describes how, in meditation, we can recite Om, Om, Om. In fact, the meditation has three parts. One is preparation, and we'll use the preparation that we've used for all of our prior meditations. The second part is Dhyana meditation, in which case we are going to concentrate the attention on Om. So Om becomes the object of meditation. In Sanskrit, we use the word alambana. So Om is the object of meditation. That's the second part. That's meant to concentrate your attention, because if your attention is not concentrated, you can't do the third part of the practice, which is Nididhyasana, contemplation. Meditation not necessarily, in this formal practice of seated Nididhyasana, Nididhyasana is always preceded by meditation. Meditation is preparatory for contemplation. That's why, again, this is not an introductory practice. So chanting Om is a meditation practice to concentrate the attention, and then once the attention is focused, concentrated, then comes the third and final part of the meditation, which is contemplation. Now, in order to contemplate, You have to think. You can't contemplate in silence. If your mind is silent, how can you contemplate? So, in the contemplation portion, I will be guiding you with words, language, to reflect on how each Om arises from consciousness, which is your essential nature, and resolves into consciousness, which is your essential nature. I'll explain that in more detail during the meditation itself. One last part of introduction, if you haven't been coming here regularly, please understand that consciousness, as we use it, the word in Advaita Vedanta, is not an idea, it's not a concept, it's not a principle. Consciousness is that by which you know what's happening in your mind right now. I'll say that again. Consciousness in Advaita Vedanta means this. Whatever is happening right now is known. How? It's happening in your mind. How is it known? It's present in your mind. How? Any other phones can be turned off. How do you know what's happening in your mind? The answer to that question is consciousness. And that consciousness is you. It's the essence of who you are. So, with that introduction, we can turn off the lights and get ready. I'll remain seated here. And again, 3 steps. First will be preparation, which will be followed by meditation on Om. And in that section, I'll chant. You need not chant anything. I will chant Om aloud. You chant it mentally, silently, along with me. So when I chant Om out loud, you chant Om silently in your mind, and then that will prepare us for the third and final part of the meditation, which I will introduce at that time. Okay, close your eyes, please. Take a deep breath. Take a moment to get settled down. We begin each meditation with a sankalpa, in which we acknowledge the fact that we live busy, complicated lives with lots of unresolved issues that can distract us during meditation. So right now, we acknowledge the unresolved issues in our lives, and we give ourselves permission to set all that aside just for the next 20 minutes. For the next 20 minutes, we can devote ourselves exclusively to this meditation. Then, a brief exercise to relax the body and concentrate the mind. Start by turning your attention to your feet and become aware of the sense of pressure as your feet press down upon the floor. Feel the firmness of the floor beneath you. Be aware of other sensations in your feet, pressure, touch of your clothing, warmth, coolness. And notice if there's any tension being held in the muscles of your feet, and let go of that tension. Then turn to your ankles and calves, and in the same way, become aware of sensations, pressure, touch of your clothing, warmth, coolness. Notice any tension in your ankles and calves, and let go of that tension. Then your knees and thighs. As before, become aware of sensations. For example, notice the weight of your hands or arms where they rest. Be aware of sensations and let go of any tension. Now, the trunk of your body. Feel the weight of your body pressing down on the seat. Feel the firmness of the seat beneath you. Let go of any tension. Your lower back and stomach. Let go of any tension. Your upper back and chest. Notice a touch of your clothing that hangs on your body. Let go of any tension in your shoulders. Let go of any tension in your upper arms, elbows, forearms, wrists, hands, fingers, right up to your fingertips. Let go of any tension. Let go of any tension in your neck, face, head, your entire body. The last step of preparation that we've included recently is prana-vikshana, observation of your breath. So turn your attention to your breathing, in particular by observing the passage of air as it enters your nostrils. Trace the passage of air as it enters your nostrils, travels down your windpipe and fills your lungs. And then again, watch your breath. Trace the passage of air as you exhale. As air leaves your lungs, travels up your windpipe, leaves through your nostrils and returns to the room. For just a minute, practice this prana-vikshana, observing the flow of breath with each inhalation, tracing the passage in your nostrils, down your windpipe, filling your lungs. With each exhalation, tracing the passage of air, leaving your lungs, traveling up your windpipe, leaving through your nostrils. Inhaling, trace the passage of air. Exhaling, trace the passage of air. This is an excellent way to prepare your mind for any particular practice of meditation. Now we begin the second part of our practice, which is meditation, to concentrate on, in this case, to concentrate on the mantra Om. Om, of course, being a name for Brahman, the reality because of which everything exists. In this second part, I'll recite the mantra aloud. You recite the mantra silently in synchrony with me. Follow me in your mental chanting. If your mind wanders away from the mantra, simply bring it back to Om. Now, after having meditated on Om to concentrate your attention and quiet your mind, we come to the third and final part of our practice, Nididhyasana, Vedantic contemplation. Based on our prior discussion, you can contemplate in this manner. Continue to chant Om mentally with me, as you did before. Then I will intentionally put a gap in between the end of one Om and the beginning of the next Om. In that gap is your opportunity to contemplate. The gap is meant for contemplation. And the contemplation is this. As you finish chanting Om with that final Ma, you'll reflect on how the sound Ma in your mind, the sound Ma in your mind resolves, disappears into silence, but not into nothingness. It disappears into you. It disappears into consciousness. So at the end of each Om, reflect on how Ma, the syllable Ma, resolves or dissolves into consciousness. It returns to consciousness. The sound Om returns to consciousness. Then, towards the end of the gap, when we begin to chant Om one more time, notice how the Om arises from silence, arises not from nothingness. In that silence, in the silent gap between the end of one Om and the beginning of the next, in that silent gap, consciousness remains. You remain. So when you begin to chant Om once again, reflect on how the sound Om arises from consciousness. Simply put, each Om arises from consciousness and resolves into consciousness. Contemplate this as we chant. I'll chant aloud again. You please chant silently along with me and contemplate. And with this, we conclude our contemplation. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat.